He rode 1,000 miles to reclaim his home, only to find a woman holding a shotgun and a boy wearing his father's boots. But the real danger wasn't the strangers in his kitchen, it was the secret buried under the floorboards that they were dying to protect. If you want more gritty, heart-pounding tales of the Old West and the secrets that define us, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Join our community of storytellers today, don't let the trail go cold. The Homecoming. The silhouette of Silas Thorne against the setting sun was a jagged tear in the silk of the Nevada sky. He was a man made of leather, salt, and silence, returning to a valley that had forgotten his name during the 7 years he'd spent chasing ghosts and outlaws. As his mare, Cinder, crested the final ridge, Silas expected to see the blackened ribs of a collapsed dream. He had left the Thorne homestead to the wolves and the dry rot after the fever took his brother. Instead, a thin ribbon of cedar smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and the smell of baked sourdough cut through the scent of sagebrush. His hand instinctively dropped to the peacemaker at his hip. The porch didn't creak, it groaned under the weight of his spurs. He didn't knock. He pushed the door open to find a woman, her hair the color of burnt copper, kneeling by the hearth with a heavy iron skillet. A boy, no older than 8, sat at the scarred oak table, Silas's oak table, meticulously cleaning a rusted pocket watch. The woman didn't scream. She simply leveled a double-barrel shotgun at his chest with the steady hands of someone who had already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "I don't know who you are, mister," she said, her voice like gravel in a silk bag, "but this house is spoken for." "By me," Silas replied, his voice a low rumble. "I built these walls. I notched the logs. And that watch the boy is holding. It has my initials on the back." The standoff lasted an eternity. The woman, Clara, eventually lowered the gun, not out of trust, but out of a weary realization that a man who traveled this far to claim a ruin wasn't going to be scared off by buckshot. She explained that she had fled a predatory land baron in the south, finding the Thorne place abandoned and half swallowed by the desert. She had rebuilt the roof, cleared the well, and raised her son, Leo, in the shadow of a man she thought was dead. Silas, hardened by years of bounty hunting, intended to evict them by sunrise. But as the night deepened, he noticed things, the way Clara flinched at loud noises, and the way Leo watched the horizon with a look of predatory Carlton-like intensity. The first twist, Silas woke at midnight to the sound of digging. He crept to the window to see Clara in the moonlight, sweating despite the desert chill, shoveling dirt in the center of the cattle pen. She wasn't gardening. She was looking for something Silas had forgotten existed. When he confronted her, she broke. She wasn't just a refugee, she was the widow of the man Silas had been hunting for 3 years, the outlaw, gentleman, Jack Silas. Jack had told her that he'd hidden a fortune in stolen gold on a worthless patch of dirt he'd scouted years ago. He hadn't told her it was Silas's childhood home. The second twist, as Silas wrestled with the irony of his home being a tomb for stolen gold, the horizon ignited. The land baron Clara had fled wasn't a businessman, he was the leader of the Vultures, a gang that Jack had betrayed. They hadn't followed Clara for love or spite, they had used her as a bloodhound to find the gold. By dawn, 20 riders surrounded the shack. Silas realized the gold wasn't in the dirt. He looked at the boy, Leo, and the pocket watch he never let go of. He pried the back off with his thumb. Inside wasn't gold, but a map etched into the brass, leading to a location 5 miles up canyon. The final revelation, Silas made a choice. He didn't want the gold, and he didn't want the blood. He gave the watch to the Vultures' leader in exchange for their lives, watching them ride off toward the canyon. But Silas knew that canyon. It was a box end with a shale ceiling prone to collapses at the slightest tremor. As the gang entered, Silas didn't fire a shot. He watched as the natural instability of the earth, and a well-placed stick of old stump blasting powder he'd kept in the cellar, brought the mountain down on the greed of men. He returned to the porch where Clara and Leo waited. The house was quiet again. Silas looked at the widow, and realized she wasn't a stranger anymore, she was the only person who had ever made those walls feel like a home. He didn't leave the next morning. He took off his spurs, sat at the table, and asked Leo to show him how to properly oil a hinge. The outlaw's gold was buried forever, but the cowboy had finally found something worth more than bullion, a reason to stop riding.